Okay, so I'm here with Scott. Scott's going to give us a quick tour of his shop, so over to you, Scott.
So I thought I'd give a little tour of the shop here. I don't have a real fancy shop in terms of all the tools that anyone could ever dream of, but I do have a pretty good assortment to do anything from furniture down to the puzzles, which I think we'll talk about more today is the puzzle side of things. This is the table saw. It's just a Home Depot model, rigid TS3650, which I think Peter Wiltshire has, and Neil, you said you just ordered one as well.
Yes, I do indeed.
This is not a fancy table saw by any means, but it has done well for me. I've been real happy with it, and now I'm kind of locked in. So this is one thing you want to consider carefully when you think about buying a table saw, is to get what you can afford, the most that you can afford at first, because now I'm kind of locked in with all my jigs fit the spacing of the miter slots and everything here. So if I were to upgrade the table saw, I'd have to remodel a lot of my jigs, and that's actually held me back quite a bit. I would think about a better table saw, but I don't really want to build all my jigs all over again, so I'm sort of stuck here. So we'll come back to the jig here. This is the main jig I use to cut polyhedral puzzles, mainly by Stuart Coffin's design. And I'll explain a lot more about this jig and kind of how I designed it and what I built into it as we go. The only thing I changed about the table saw is I put a router table wing on here in place of the cast iron wing that came with it. That's been a nice addition, have a nice flat surface for a router table and a real solid place to keep that, and it also keeps it combined the space. It makes a much better use of the limited space I have in the garage here. So we'll go over here to the Shopsmith. This is a very old Shopsmith. When I ran the serial number on it, it came back. This is a 1958 model Shopsmith. It was given to me. I don't use it for anything real fancy. I use it mainly for the bandsaw to rough saw sticks for puzzles out of exotic woods. The bandsaw is nice because I don't waste a lot of wood in the kerf. It's a very thin blade and I don't waste a lot of wood. I also use it for the drum sander, which you see here, and a special little cradle. I've actually made quite a few little cradles for the drum sander to either add a chamfer to the edge of puzzle sticks, or in this case take the very tip of the center block off for Cluster Plus puzzles that I ran a bunch of this year. Let me get a block and I'll show you how that works. So this is a center block that's used for the Cluster Plus. The way that the coordinate motion works, you have to take off this center part, which is the very center of the puzzle, in order for the pieces to rotate together. And so I use this little cradle here to take off that center point. So I just slide it through here against the motion and eventually sand this all down to make the flat on the end. And I found that this sort of technique works really well to put a chamfer on the edge of square blocks too, cubes that I use to make cube puzzles.
So just change the height of that for however much material you want to take off.
So this is just clamped on, I just move it back, and I have a little, another jig that's very similar to this that I use to chamfer the edges of cube blocks too. So. Moving on from the Shopsmith, I have a small Grizzly planer, just a 12.5-inch planer. I use that mostly for furniture. That's done me well for many years as well. I also have a Formax 1020 drum sander, which works great for thin panels, and it's completely open on one end. So that's why the 1020, the drum is 10 inches wide, but I can cantilever things out beyond here and flip it around, and you can actually sand a 20-inch wide panel there. So that's been pretty handy for the furniture side of things. I actually bought this for puzzles because I was having trouble with the planer chewing up figured woods when I make puzzle sticks, and I bought the sander thinking I could use that, but what I found was that I couldn't get the dimensional control out of a sander that I could get out of a planer. So I eventually went to a table saw method for making square sticks instead of using a planer or the sander. But I've kept the sander. It works great for making panels for furniture that I make for our family. Simple drill press, just a benchtop model. One thing I don't like about this is changing the belts for the different speeds. I'd like to have a variable speed drill press at some point, but I'm not sure if I'm going to need that, because my latest toy here is this milling machine. It's a Grizzly 704. This is actually a very popular milling machine these days. I waited 6 months for this thing to arrive just recently. So as I kind of go with some of the puzzles, I found that working with more and more precision has kind of caused me to drift more toward the metalworking side of things. They have different techniques, and there's actually a lot of information out there to do metalworking that's really helpful with making the puzzles. So I bought the mill to make jigs for the puzzles to begin with, but I know it'll probably go well beyond that. I'll start working with metals and maybe plastics, and even cut some wood on this. This is a mill that a lot of people these days are converting to CNC control, and I think at some point I'll probably do that as well. So it's just a simple benchtop mill, but it's got a lot of capabilities. So I think aluminum and plastics will be easy metals to work on this, but I've seen people cut stainless and other metals as well. So this is just brand new. I received it in June. I ordered it December last year and finally received it after a long wait there. But I think it's going to be a real handy addition. I haven't even dialed it in yet to get it all set up, but plan to do that later this summer.
Lots of fun ahead then.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so then I just have this actually was just a sheet of plywood that I put up on legs and built a bench, and then it kind of evolved to be the outfeed table for the table saw. I cut the big notch out of it this last winter, and so my benches always evolve. I can never just leave a bench alone. I always modify it as I go, and, but it's worked well. It's been a nice heavy bench and real good for assembly area for furniture projects that I've done too. And so this sort of configuration is what I use when I set up for puzzles. I have the box of sticks over here, which we can walk around the other side and see, and the table saw is kind of the centerpiece for all my puzzle work. So Neil's just asking me about how many sticks I keep, and it looks like I have a lot here, but I could go through these pretty quickly. I try not to keep them for too long because the dimensions will change, so I don't try to keep them for more than 6 months or so. I try to consume these and use them up, and I let them sit in rough form over on the wood rack over here, which shows some of the assortment of exotic woods that I have. Some Purple Heart here. This is Honduras rosewood, Bocote, Babinga, some Kingwood, all kinds of stuff here that I collect up. I find it on sale and I buy it up and then I store it. It's good to have it stored for a while because it seasons. It kind of equilibrates with the moisture and the environment that we have here in California. And then I find that once I do that, if I finish up a puzzle, put wax on it and lacquer and everything, that no matter where I send it, it seems to be stable enough that the fit and the finish stays well, stays in good shape. Even around the world, I haven't received any complaints that things get too loose or they bind up too tight. So I think on the West Coast we have a good in-between sort of environment, not too humid, not too dry, so that things don't change too much when I send out the puzzles to places all over the world, really, which is kind of an honor to have my little hobby have grown to the point where people all over the world are interested in the work that I do. So I appreciate everyone's interest and support that they've provided, and I really appreciate Stuart Coffin making all of his puzzle designs available for all of us to enjoy, to make, and even to sell. So thanks to everybody for all the support.
Yeah, thanks for showing us around.
Yeah.